So as leaders, we work with others. We enable them to perform, to do really well. We inspire, we motivate, we do whatever else needs to happen for that performance to come. One of the really powerful ways to look at human relationships is to think about them through a lens created by a chap called Eric Berne, half a century ago nearly, who wrote a book called Games People Play and created a very simple framework that we find very powerful. And it enables us to get a sense of how our relationships are and how we would like them to be. So Berne suggested that all human beings have experience of a state that he called the child state. The child state. Even human beings who are children have experience of that state. I don't know of anybody who can remember how they were when they were 6 months or a year old. But we can suppose that in that state there's an experience of having stuff given to you and done to you and so on. So that's the child state, which will qualify, because Berne does, by differentiating between what he calls natural child, just being there, and what he calls adaptive child, adapted to circumstances, and what I will call, more or less, controlled child, because it's just more intuitive. So in the child state, we may be in a natural state, we may be experienced being controlled. This is relevant because Berne suggests that that child state, as well as two more we'll come to, is a state that we experience even as adults, the adaptive child or controlled child. So if child state is one state, there's another that he references, which has a dynamic relationship with child state. If you have child, then you also have parent state. If someone is in child, someone else is likely to be in parent. And the parents, of course, are there for the children. And here again, we have natural parent and also adaptive parent. And I will talk about controlling parent, controlling parent. So for the sake of speed and simplicity, we'll now leave natural child and natural parent and just focus on controlled child and controlling parent. So in Berne's view, adults sometimes conduct their relationships through this lens of control and being controlled. And that's a parent-child relationship. There's also a third state that Berne references, which he calls adult. So in the adult state, there's no control. When we have an adult-to-adult relationship, neither of us is in controlled child or controlling parent. We're both just here. Who knows where the next great idea will come from? Who cares who's in charge? We're just here in the moment. And that's adult to adult. So the suggestion is that there are these three states for practical purposes that adults live their lives in terms of relationship: controlled child, controlling parent, and adult. Well, fine and good. Where does this get real for us? Have you ever experienced someone who caused you to go into that controlled child state? Maybe they gave you a look, a tone of voice, or something, a physical movement, and it just made you jump and go into that controlled child state. Or maybe just things felt too difficult. You felt you couldn't do it. Your inner voice started kicking off with, I can't do this, this is no good, this is too hard, this is too difficult. In each case, or whatever you remember, you went into that controlled child state. So the invitation there in a moment is to remember a trigger or triggers that pushed you into that controlled child state, and how it felt when you were going there. So you've got the external stimulus and then you've got your internal response, whatever it was. That's the second part. And then the third part is, what could you maybe, in principle at least, do differently next time you're confronted with that same stimulus? The old stimulus, your old response, and a potential new response. So now you've thought a little bit about triggers that have sometimes pushed you into the controlled child space, and begun to think about how else you could respond at that time. And we'll also provide some tools that can be really helpful. Let's turn now to a time when you went into the controlling parent. Maybe things weren't working. There was some frustration, some difficulty, and you kind of just wanted to say, just do it. Just get it done. Just like that. You remember such a time? I wonder how that felt for you. So the task here is to remember 2 or 3 times when there's an external stimulus. What was it? What did it look like? There was an internal response. And how did that feel? And then how else could you, in principle, respond next time you feel that urge to go into that controlling parent? So you've now captured a little bit of a sense of how it is for you when you have gone into controlling parent slightly, or a lot, as well as how it is when you've been into controlled child. The third state that Eric Berne talks about is the adult to adult. In adult to adult, there's no control, as we mentioned. You're just here. And your focus isn't on yourself. It isn't about me, me, me. It's about we rather than me. It's even about the work, what has to happen. Because when we're in child, when we're in parent, our focus is actually really on me. Is this working out for me? Will it be okay? What will happen to me? What are they thinking about me? Is all about me, actually. It's triggered by fear into that child, into that parent state. We've lost our focus as a leader. And I wonder, when you think about it, the child and parent states, whether there's any sense of any space or whether it just feels really tight and stuck. Because in the adult space, there's a sense of openness and flow, a sense of we'll get there, a sense of this is okay. So why would you want to be anywhere else other than the adult state? And the answer, probably consciously, is you wouldn't want to be in any other state. You want to be just here, in the adult state. So that's where we want to be. Oh, and of course, what kind of a leader do you want to follow? One who's sometimes losing it and going into controlling parent? Or into control child? Would you want that person as a leader? And if you were there, would your team want you as a leader? Probably not. So you know, being an adult to adult, and noticing when that stimulus comes up that could take you somewhere else. Noticing it, being aware of it, just letting it go. This may not be an overnight switch from one state completely to another where it all runs perfectly. First step, become aware when you're facing a trigger that could push you to child or could push you to parent. Be aware of it. Be aware if actually you start moving in that direction. And when you notice that, instead of going, this is so terrible, I'm moving in that state, the invitation is to feel good that you've noticed. Because as soon as you notice that you've lost it a little, you can come back and be in this adult to adult space. So that's the challenge for you, to notice, the homework to take away as you head towards perhaps a more adult form of leadership.